Hey, how's it going? Are you working in Godot but haven't used signals? Maybe you've heard about them or used them for a button, but that's all you've done. Signals can be used to update UI elements such as HP or levels, change the game state when you faint, even let the game know when the next step needs to happen. Let me say, being able to use signals is one of the most important things you can learn when working in Godot. First, we'll cover basic signal usage by looking at a button to understand that many nodes come with built-in signals for you to leverage. Then, we'll look at some examples on how we can apply what we learned about signals. And finally, we'll look at a couple different architectures for how signaling happens and how these signals can connect. If you have any questions or if you're curious about any other topics, just drop a comment below. Let's get started. Alright, so open up your project. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new scene by hitting this plus button right here. And then I'm going to add a user interface node, a control node on the top. Let's select this and then hit Control A to create a node. We're looking for a texture button. Now you're going to notice that this button, it's blank right now, so we're going to scroll down all the way down in our file system tab because we're looking for the icon.svg file. And I'm going to expand textures in the inspector right here and throw the icon.svg over into normal. This picture might be a little bit bigger or smaller depending on the resolution of your game. Mine is 320 the viewport width and the height is 180, so it might look a lot larger than your button on your screen. Now, the important thing that I want to show you is going to be signals. It's over. So how this works, guys, is if you select the node that you're looking at, it might have signals associated with the node. So if you hit this tab, it'll show you what signals are associated with this texture button. Likewise, if you were to click the control node, the list of signals is going to change based on what this node actually is. So you're going to notice that the control node has control class related signals, such as these, whereas the texture button has both the base button, but also everything in control. Now that's cool and all, but how do we use these signals? And what are these even for? The way we are going to use these signals is pretty simple. We need to have a script somewhere in our scene because these signals require a connection to a node that has a script. Right now, our scene has no scripts, which means we can't utilize any signals. So the first thing we gotta do is we gotta add a script somewhere. So let's throw a script onto the top right here, onto this control node. I'm gonna hit this control right here, and then I'm gonna hit this button. And I'm gonna add a prototype control script. The location can be wherever you want. And I'm going to add another script onto this texture button just to show you guys what's going on. Alright, so inside our scene, this being our scene, made up of the control node on top and the texture button in the middle, we have a script on the control and a script on the texture button. So now with that being done, we can go back to the texture button and I can double click this pressed signal and that'll prompt me to connect the signal somewhere. And I can connect it to either of these two because the script is attached. So I'm going to just do it on top, connect. And what that does is it's going to create a function for you and it's going to show that this function has been connected. Now it might look like I just pressed any random signal, but I did press a specific one. If you highlight over the signal, it'll tell you what the signal actually does. And not only that, you can read up on all of these signals if you look up the class right here. In this case, it's going to be base button. So I've got two tabs right here where I look for base button Godot. And I've also tried texture button, but it's only one of them that has all the signals and it's going to be in the base button. So I can see that there's a button down, button up, press signal, and it tells me exactly what happens when one of these signals is initiated. However, if I go to the texture button, it will only show me the properties. but it will link to the base button. So if you don't really know what's going on or what signals you should use, you should definitely read up on them. So before we start talking about the signal that we connected, let's save our scene, Control S. I'm just gonna save it as a prototype control, and it doesn't really matter where. You guys can put it where you need it. So this signal that we just connected, this press signal, it emits when you press the button. It's as simple as that. So let's see if we can make it work. I'm just gonna hit print and I'm gonna say hello. Save that, and then I'm gonna run the scene. And it's taken a minute. It's taken 2 minutes. It's taken a long time. There we go. All right, please ignore all of this. I'm sorry about that, guys. This button right here is our button, and when we hit it, we should see hello. Look at that. So we know that when we press the button, it's going to shoot something out and it's going to be hello. Hopefully the gears are turning in your head. This is the power of signals, and now you must be thinking like, hey, maybe there's some really cool signals that you can use to make stuff happen. And there really are, depending on the kind of game that you're making. So let's take a look at another signal. I'm going to go click the texture button because I want a signal from here. And this time I want to do mouse entered, which is a signal that emits when we hover over the control. When we hover over, in this case, it's the texture button. So now I'm going to show you, I'm going to connect it to the texture button, which is not where we initially connected our first signal. And now this time I'm going to say print mouse hovering over button, just like that. So we have one signal from the texture button that's connected to the control, one signal from the texture button connected to itself. If we click this, we get to see the signal dock, and these are all the signals that this node is connected with. So I'm going to run this and let's see what happens. We mouse over and we see mouse hovering over button. And when we click, we get hello. Going over to the 2D tab, I'm looking at my Godot button and I want to say, hey, maybe it's kind of hard to see why these signals might be very useful when we're looking at something that's just like this, right? But if you imagine this is like a chest or something, and we hover over the said chest, what if there's like a little background, something like a shining light or something that goes around the chest, you know? So that's kind of how you would approach it. And then when you click on the chest, maybe a panel pops out. All of these things are built on signals, not just functions. Functions will always be there, but you need signals to tell you, hey, this event happened. I received a little bit of input, so now I'm going to do this. When we hover over the button, how about we change the color of it? I'm going to use the modulate property and set it to color dot blue violet. That sounds good. So now I'm going to run it, and when I mouse over it, wow, it's just like that. And now I'm going to go back over to the other script. Now for this, let's change the texture button so that it does something. First and foremost, I'm going to have to reference my texture button. I'm going to do that by control click and dragging. And then I'm going to use this reference that I made, texture button dot, and we're going to access the property rotation degrees because we want to rotate it. Let's increment it by 180 degrees, which will flip it on its head. And then if we click it again, hopefully it'll come back to normal. And the last thing I want to check is I want to click the texture button. I want to go over to the pivot offset ratio. And I just want to make this 0.5 so that it's on center. You can read up on it. It's basically, it tells the control like how it's going to scale, how it's going to rotate, stuff like that based on this pivot offset. So now we run current scene. We hover over it and it turns purple, and then we click it and bam. Look at that. Good. Okay. So for part 2, we're going to look at real examples and also try to use custom signals. So first and foremost, we've got this scene right here. And when I click this button, I want it to do something. Let's say we just increment gold, right? Clicking this button gives us gold. Now, typically how I would go about it is I would have a singleton. A singleton is something that just exists when you run your game, and you get to store data, variables, whatever you want up there, and it'll be persistent across every scene in your game. Just showing you what my singleton looks like, I'm going to go over to the scripts, and I've got this data singleton, right? And I'm just going to go down and show you that there's this variable gold right here. Inside it, I'm using a setter, which is something you can do so that whenever there's gold and the value gets changed, the setter runs, and then it sets the gold equal to the value of whatever you set it to. And then there's a signal that's emitted, this resource update signal. Now, how did I go about getting this? It's as simple as just typing up here, signal, resource, where is it? Signal, signal, resource, update. That's all I had to do to create my signal. And so all I'm doing is, hey, whenever this gold value is changing, this resource update is emitted. Okay, we kind of understand what is going on, but then how do we interact with this, right? We have to somehow connect it. When we were looking at the texture button, there was a physical thing we could use using Godot. Like we could hit this and this screen pops up letting us connect signals. But if we want to connect signals through code, then this is how we're going to go about it. So let's create something that can receive this signal. Most of the time when it's a value like this that's getting changed, I want to use a label. A label is something that shows information written. So Control A, and then I'm going to select the label. I'm going to call this label gold. And I'll say gold amounts here and move it down. Now let's give this label gold a script, because what do we need to connect signals? We need a script. And now that we're looking at the script on this label, let's go ahead and do something that we've never done before with custom signals. Is we're going to connect this signal. So first and foremost, we need the ready function. And inside here, we're going to connect the signal using the singleton. My singleton is called data. And this is how I access anything inside my data singleton, is by calling this. And then I'm going to do gold. No. I'm going to do resource. I'm going to look for the signal, update. And now once I've named my signal, I can hit .connect. And now I can connect it to something. What you have to connect it to is a function. So I'm going to create this function called update label. Returns void. Text equals string data.gold. And then I'm going to take this method name, this function name, and I'm going to paste it right here. And now everything has been connected. This signal, it's a custom signal that lives inside my data singleton. I put the signal down, and once I do, I can use this .connect, and then I can give it a function to connect to. So now whenever this resource update signal is emitted, this function is automatically going to run. Let's take a look at it by going over to the texture button and making sure that this increments the gold. Data.gold plus equals 1, just like that. And now if we run this, it works just like that. I'm going to go over to the control script by hitting the script button right here. And I want to show you, just to reiterate what we've done before, function ready. I'm going to show you how to connect the signal again. So the signal already exists. I'm going to look at this exact same texture button pressed signal. This one we created by using the actual inspector, using Godot. But if you wanted to do it in code, then we have access to this button right here because we created a reference, right? And if we have a reference, if we have a class that has signals in it, then we can access it. So the signal name is pressed, And if you forgot, you can click this node, you can look at the signals, and it's this right here, pressed. So we're looking for the signal, and it shows this icon right here, indicating that it is a signal. And just like before, we're looking for the connect function. And what do we have to do? We have to give it a function name. Now, this is not the right way to go about it. So here, let's do function, and then we're just going to create our own function, onPressed. Just like that, returns void, pass. Now we can feed this in. And so now, not only is the texture button pressed connected right here, but it is also connected to this function. Just to show, print hello world 3. So now when we run it and when we press the button, hello world 3 pops up. Very, very interesting. Now I'd like to definitely show a little bit more, but these signals are very, very game specific. The most important thing is whenever you need to create a signal, you just go signal and then type in your signal name, my signal name. And now you can use it however you want, whenever you want. If onPressed, you can also emit the signal. It works like that, my signal name dot emit. So with this, you can use your custom functions, use your custom signals so that when some event occurs, you can react. You can have Godot follow it up with something else. If after it's done spinning, you want to send a signal, hey, this is done spinning, so now you can move it. So many different ways to use signals, but you gotta get into the habit of creating them, emitting them, connecting them. And the very last thing I want to talk about is the overall architecture. A very simple way to consider signals is you want to signal upwards. Just generally speaking, you don't have to take it as a fact. Just generally speaking, signals go up the tree, this scene tree. So look at how this button is. We're signaling up to the parent, the control node. But the reason why we don't necessarily signal down is because the child doesn't really know what the parent is, but the parents will always know what the children are. And if the parent knows what the children are, you don't have to signal down, because instead of connecting to a function, you can just call this node and run the node's function. So I'll show you what that means. Just to reiterate, we have this texture button. It's right here, and the texture button has a signal called pressed, right? We're connecting up. So where we've connected it is one level up from the button. It's at the parent level, so we've signaled up. Texture button pressed, and we've connected it. So that when there's a signal that's emitted here, something happens on the parent. This happens. But now, if we wanted to signal down, we don't have to signal down, because what we can do instead is we can call this texture button, and it's not going to work because my texture button doesn't have a class name. So I'm just going to give it a class name real quick. Class name, my special button. Just like that. And then I'm going to go back up to the control, and I'm going to call this my special button. Okay, so now it recognizes that this is a custom class. It's a my special button, and because it's my special button, I'm going to give it a custom function. Function, let's do nothing. Okay, so now because we have a class, well, let me stop that and let me save that one more time. So now because we have access to this class, we've referenced it, I can signal if I wanted to, but what I can just do is, hey, say the gold has changed and I need something to happen at the texture button level, I can just call the texture button and then run the function that I need, which is, what is it? Let's do nothing. Let's do nothing. So this is why you don't necessarily have to signal down, because you know what your child is. and you can just call the function directly. But then if you're the child, you don't know this control node, you don't know what class this is, so you have to kind of signal up, and the parent is going to have to receive the signal and then react. I know that might be a little bit confusing, but in general, if you understand that, if you can get away from using stuff like get parent, which you can do, and you can call signals from your parent like this, it's not necessarily amazing, mostly because you can break stuff, but in general, it just doesn't seem like the right way to go about it. Of course, you can do whatever you want. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Control, click, drag, and you'll get something like this, which means something very similar to get parent, if not the same thing. It doesn't quite know what it is, it just knows that it needs to look up. But if you were to do the exact same thing on the bottom, it will give you exactly what it is. It will give you the location of this label. Control, click, drag, just like this. So the parent will always know what the children is, but the children do not know what the parent is, which is why you might want to signal up to your parents. Your parents will receive and react. And also, for the final note, when we talk about singletons, we can throw signals inside the singleton, and anyone can catch these signals. So if you have variables in here in your singleton, your variables are changing. Once it's changed, you use the setter so that it can react once the value has changed. You just emit the signal. And anywhere in your scripts, anywhere you need to have something change, you can just go to the labels. You can connect to the signal that's being emitted from your singleton, the signal that's emitted, connect it to the function that you want to run. And that way, you can always react to the information or to the input that's happening and make your game function as it should. That was a lot of stuff. Hopefully it wasn't too much. It's probably a little bit complicated. I really wish I didn't have to talk about the singleton and the setter, because I know those are things that were kind of out of scope of this video, but are in and of themselves a little bit more complicated and confusing. But if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all my channel members, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.